Good day, everyone. It's Patty in the AM. Today is July 15th, 2024. And today, my topic is going to be kindness. Let it begin with me. And I did a few posts today, and one was about purpose. My purpose is I've been blessed to know what my purpose is, and it is to, as it's been so beautifully spoken through me many years ago, it was to share the word, the word, and maybe, here comes Dallas. Sorry, everyone. Let me get up on this chair. He knows it's time. Okay, there we go. Good boy. Okay. And so to me, to share the word is, I don't know the Bible, and I mean, I've read a few passages, I've picked it up, and I do share a quote from time to time, and I actually just did share a quote. And it's because it does, it's something to the effect of, we love because we were first loved. And I feel that the posts I've done kind of relate to the current events of what happened to President Trump the other day. And I think it touched me so much, or reached me so much, because one of my dearest friends, who we have spiritual conversations quite frequently, she had asked me if I had heard about what happened, and I said yes. I said, I really don't want to give it too much energy one way or the other. And she abruptly had spoken, and she said, and he believes in the right to have a gun. And I said, it's not about guns. It's about anyone can harm someone. Even if we take away all the guns in the world, we still have things that can harm others. Should we take away all the knives? Should we take away all the rocks? Should we take away, oh my gosh, our fish? There's so many things, and that's not what it's about. It's about, to me, where we place our energy. We don't realize the power of our own thoughts, our own consciousness, how when we think not the best of others, we're creating more power towards them not being the best, or at least through our eyes. And I did share, it's an old school thought, and I believe they say it's from like Cherokee or some kind of maybe American Indian, but it is, let me get to it, because I think it really applies. And it was funny because the more I started thinking about, the posts I had put up today and what I was going to speak about, more thoughts just happened to fall in line. Even the thought of the day, which, pops up at 6 a.m. I don't create it. It's already created. And that is by Edgar Cayce. But anyways, back to the legend. And it says that it was commonly attributed to either Cherokee or any indigenous American tribes. So it's about the wolf that you feed, It talks about the legend is usually framed as the grandfather or elder passing wisdom to a young listener. The elder describes a battle between two wolves within oneself, using a battle as a metaphor for inner conflict. When the little listener asks which wolf wins, the grandfather answers whichever one you feed. And so the interesting part in that is that it's not only the conflict within yourself, it's that the conflict within yourself exists outside yourself. I mean, if you've ever had someone that you had troubles with, whether it's your ex or a friend or a co-worker, and you keep talking about all the things that you don't like about them and how bad they are and how mean they are and how they yell at it or whatever, you're going to make that become more and more and more so. And I know it's not an easy adjustment because I'm guilty of it myself, whether it was a broken heart, whatever it might have been. You just are so mad that they've done something, and maybe they cheated on you, maybe they didn't tell you the truth, whatever it was, but it really hit a chord in you, so you got very upset. And even if you didn't verbally say it to them how upset you were, just your thinking thoughts are making them become that thinking thought. So how do we redirect our energy? I mean, it's challenging, I know, but it's almost like it's an individual view. So whereas, my dear friend, who her first thought was, this man believes in guns, and, even I didn't get upset with her, of course. I just tried to give her another view that, it doesn't matter what we believe in, it's how the person, we've all known, it's how the person is taught to use something, or how they've been raised, or what their journey is in this life to help us understand how we can best use our own tools. I mean, my first boyfriend was an avid hunter. I mean, he tied his own flies, he cared greatly about the animal life and really loved and worshipped them and was so kind, even though he did hunt. He still used every part, of whatever he hunted. I mean, it's not that I could hunt because I don't have it in me, but I understand that, it's part of life sometimes, but he was raised to really care for that which he hunted, and, even going fishing. So, in that premises, we can learn the right way and the wrong way of how to use something, but it's so much deeper than that. It's how are we cheering on our crowds, and even, I don't like to talk about politics or any of it, but, we're all guilty of cheering on who, this one did that and that one did this, and, we're not accountable ourselves of thinking, what are we thinking? Why are we thinking bad of anyone? Why can't we see the best in everyone? Why can't we be supportive of that? I mean, how are we towards our own children? Do we beat them down to the ground? Do we tell them all the bad things they do? Or do we lift them up and support them by seeing all the good that they do? And, focusing on that and, being an example of how to be. We can't force our children or anyone's children, 90 or 2 years old, to be as we are, but we can continue to be that example and remember that we all have our journey. We can't do the work for someone else. So I'm having this conversation because even when we complain about who's complaining, we're judging. We are best to, as I still remember my mom when she was frustrated, she normally wouldn't say something, but you definitely saw her at that look where she was like mad, but she'd almost bite her tongue. But she was raised in a time where we spoke kind to one another, that you didn't say things you shouldn't. You spoke with kindness. I really should gather around and get all my relatives' permission to publish some of the letters that not only my mother and her sisters had written to their parents, whether they were away or not, but also towards one another, even when they were older. You never saw unspoken words. I mean, words that were harmful or hurtful. They were always, just goodness. And there were 7 girls. I mean, we can fight amongst ourselves or not. There's a great little thought out there I posted a couple weeks ago that even the limbs upon a tree know not to fight amongst themselves. So I do want to take the thought, too, as well, that I had written. It was several years ago. And let me find it. Or maybe I do. Oh, this one I want to share because I really like this one, too. It's about, it's the scene from Evan Almighty. And if you never watched Evan Almighty with Steve Carell and Morgan Freeman, you should watch it. It's, I know that it's not like a real story or anything like that, but I love the moral of the story. And it's because the woman in the story, who was the wife, playing the wife of Steve Carell, and she, didn't understand why everything was going crazy in the scenes and everything, and why was her husband experiencing what he was experiencing, and all the, the building of the ark and everything. If you've watched the movie, you know what I mean. And so God, played by Morgan Freeman, says, let me ask you something. If someone prays for patience, you think God gives them patience? Or does he give them the opportunity to be patient? If he prayed for courage, does God give him courage? Or does he give him opportunities to be courageous? If someone prayed for the family to be closer, Do you think God zaps them with warm, fuzzy feelings? Or does he give them opportunities to love each other? So I brought up that because I wanted to bring something else up, and I've brought it up before. It is, if you know who Mr. Rogers was, the show, and Mr. Rogers himself, you'll be familiar with a quote that he had spoken, that his mom, he said when he was a little boy, he remembered looking outside a window, and I think they lived in an apartment housing kind of structure, and there was something awful happening outside. I don't know if it was a bad accident or some kind of catastrophe, and he was so upset about it, and his mom says, you know, what you can do, there's nothing you can do about what's already happened, but what you can do is look for the helpers. And to me, that touched me deeply, because looking for the helpers is like looking for the kindness, looking for the good, looking for, how you can spread the word. It's not, gossiping about who hasn't done what and who's not doing it. It's being a true spirit who is the teacher of kindness, the teacher of love, the teacher of light, to be the example of. And one more thing, it's like I wanted to get back to it because it is something I had written and I really felt it applied here. And it is, I don't even know if I can find it now, so maybe we don't need to talk about it. But basically, I had written about how we have experiences to teach us to come together, to realize that who am I if I am not my brother? We are all in this together. We are all one. So that's why even science is now proving that what we do to ourselves, we do to another. And it comes back, and they talk about karma. Karma it's not so much karma as it is an instant boomerang back to you. Have you ever had something happen and say, "Oh, I was just talking about that," or someone calls you and you say like, "Oh my gosh, I was just thinking of you." Now, those aren't bad things, right? But what if it is something bad? Something kind of, you're frustrated. Maybe you're driving down the road and you, like I know it happened to me the other day, like I was just driving down the road and somebody was coming the other way and they almost hit me head on because they weren't paying attention, and it was a lot of traffic. I'm like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? And it's like, don't let that go, because we've all had our moments of not paying attention. Each and every one of us has had a moment of being that driver and not paying attention. There have been many examples of, how we can look at something. And I feel that, one of the things that really bothered me, and I've probably talked about it, is how much we don't understand the energy and power behind our thoughts and how they create more and more and more and more. I was reminded of the awful experience that happened at the elementary school. It was Sandy. And, it was talked about so much, and all the evil and all the heart, the hurt people. Of course, you've lost your children. It's like, if you've never lost a child, you don't even want to think about what it would feel like or anything like that. You just want to just knock it out of your head, because it's not something you ever want to come into your imagination or even happen in your outside world. But what I noticed is that the hurricane that built up shortly after down south that caused so much destruction was named Sandy. And I know it's not like an identical happening, but what it is like when we start using one word and equating it to something awful, we'll keep replicating something awful associated with that name. And that's just how we create, and it's trying to show us to find the light in every situation, find the goodness in every situation. There's something so deep inside us that knows that even when we walk in a darkened room, there's something in us that tries to find the light. And that's why we're here in these human bodies. If anything, we're trying to learn or remember that there's always light to see. Think on it. Even when we are out in the pitch dark, we could go outside, and yet there's something in us that's struggling to see light. It's always there. It's always present. And that's why I just a moment ago put up a picture of a flower. I took it yesterday, and it's just a weed. There are weeds growing in the perimeter of the yard here. But to me, it's like the sun's out, and it's just like radiating in the sunlight. It's just feeling the warmth and looking toward the light, and it's just almost coming to life. Not that of course it's alive. It's a growing plant, but it's like the value of what happens to our essence when we look towards the light alone. So today, I really, really, really would like us to focus on goodness. Focus on kindness. No matter what's happening, there is always something good. And, even if we have to reflect back, I know I've brought it up a few times, is the tsunami that happened, I think it was 2005 in Indonesia. I can't remember, but I think I brought it up last time. But the impact that had on people, that the destruction was so heinous, so awful, but there was nobody to blame it on because it was an act of nature. There was nothing you could do. That's how fast it happened. I mean, maybe we could have better warning system and such, but really, sometimes an act like that will happen to bring together people who've forgotten to come together. So I ask, because that's what my post was that I had written several years back and reposted today. And if I didn't, I'll make sure I find it and post it. It might not have just refreshed on my page. But it really is telling us sometimes these awful acts are to remind us to come together, even in the worst of times. Because if we can't come together, we'll fall apart. Because united we stand, divided we fall. So let's find a way. Search your soul. Find a way to always come together in any way that you can. Try to not look in disgust upon another, but in the value that they bring. And if it's just the value to make you look upon all with love rather than what you don't like. Because there's always going to be things that you don't like about another person. That you could, if you want, you can pick that apart and pick it apart and pick it apart. But why look for something wrong when you can look for something you like? Well, I'm not wrong, but why not look for something that you really enjoy in someone? Everyone has value to bring to the table. Have you ever worked in a restaurant, like a really busy restaurant, or even a busy office? Maybe each coworker is not your favorite cup of tea, not somebody that you want to live with for the rest of your life. And maybe to you they're like the worst worker, but they do have something to bring to the table. And maybe it's maybe they're a great joke teller, or maybe they're a beautiful person on the outside and people just enjoy seeing that. Maybe they're great at serving, maybe they're just great at making soup. Who knows? But it's like everyone has a part to bring to the table. And I always use the example of a great pot of soup. There's many parts to soup, well, depending on how many parts you put in. But if you've noticed, there's sometimes, even if we use some, basil or parsley, of all these different herbs, if you put one in your mouth, it might be a little bit bitter and not be as delicious as it might be after the flavor has been, simmered in the soup. So what I'm trying to say is there's a lot of parts to the soup that might not be delicious apart, but when you put them together, they create the most magnificent soup. And this can also happen too on a movie set, like I said, or where you work. You might not see the joy in what it has to offer, its clients. But when you put them all together, it's so needed for each and every one that comes through the door. So let's look for that light and that love, and let's focus upon that until all the shadows fade. I am here. If you have any questions, anything you'd like to talk about next week, please let me know. I love you all. Have a wonderful day. Share love.